is learning a result of thinking, or is thinking a result of good learning?
Okay, so let's take the first question. Is learning a result of thinking? Let's say you know something today. Let's say, let's say I have a certain understanding of how this mic operates today. I have a very basic understanding. Uh, Now, if I want to change from this level of understanding to a higher level, I'll have to put the effort to know the new thing, and then to forego the previous thing, and then to accept whether the new thing. So I have to do something, some amount of cognitive work. So to for me to learn something about the mic, I have to put my mind. I won't do it automatically. Like, this mic is here. I didn't think of anything about the mic. But when you ask me something about the mic, I will be forced to think.
Welcome to Will Talks podcast. Today we have a brilliant young man, someone who believes that thinking is what's going to change Indian classrooms. We have with us today Aneesh Bangia, the co-founder of Open Door. Aneesh, welcome to Mumbai. Thank you for coming to our studios, and I'm so glad to have you here today. How are you feeling?
Thank you. It's my first podcast, and I'm looking forward to having a great conversation. Thank you for inviting. Yeah.
Brilliant. Tell us a little bit more about yourself. Where did you come from, and what have you studied? And what do you think people would like to know about you?
So, my name is Anish, and I am one of the co-founders of Open Door. I studied engineering. Many people did not know what to do after schooling, so I studied for an exam called IIT JEE. Luckily, got into a good college, IIT Madras, and had a great time in the college. And like most people, I sat for placements, and I joined a company called Ashok Leyland in Chennai. I was in the R&D division of this company that makes trucks and buses. While I was in the company, I was a small part of a large corporate house. So very early, I figured out that I can do something much bigger, but I did not know what to do at that point. So then one thing led to the other. But I after that I started the Open Door with a friend of mine from college, IIT Madras. His name is Abhishek, and then we started Open Door in 2013, and then it's been about 10 years since we have been running Open Door, and yeah, that's what we do. We work with schools.
Why the name Open Door?
So yeah, it has a interesting story. When Abhishek and I we were thinking of what name to give to our company, we thought of many options. We thought our vision is that we want to make children a better thinker, a lifelong learner, and the first names that came to our mind all had a edu in it or education in it, and we did not want something that conventional. So anything related to edu, education was ruled out. We were looking for something more metaphorical, something that sort of represents our vision very clearly. And for that, like the reader has to think a little bit and then arrive at the vision. And Abhishek and I were just brainstorming. He was coming up with 10 names. I was coming up with 10 names. Then one of the names that Abhishek came up with was Open Door. And as soon as he said that, I said, "Stop! This sounds really good." He said, "It sounds really good to me." And yeah, then when we work with schools now, teachers, students, everybody, once they know about us and when they hear the name, they can easily relate that we want children to think, to question freely, and Open Door sort of has the closest relation to it. Of course, when we were starting up, nobody knew about us, so people used to think we were a furniture company and used to get calls about doors and furniture. But then slowly, as people got to know about us, the people really like our name, I think, and we are still very happy. Sometimes you get bored of a name in a few years. So far, we are still very happy we chose Open Door.
So you decided to teach children to think. आप आईआईटी गए हो, आपने आईआईटी एग्जाम क्रैक किया है, आईआईटी कंप्लीट किया है आपने, and you got the dream job perhaps that you would have got because you came out of the IIT. How did you even think of getting into teaching, or for that matter, teaching of thinking? I mean,
So it was not planned at all. When I was in Ashok Leyland in my first job, and I was not very happy with what I was doing. One incident, very interesting incident happened. There was a testing of a door, like a door of a truck that was happening. And I pointed out to my manager at that point that he's making a mistake in a basic physics calculation. And he got offended by my point that there was a big blunder. So he said, if you know so much about physics, why don't you start teaching us physics then? So I thought he was serious. I took it seriously. And I started teaching physics to my colleagues at Ashok Leyland. So every Thursday, I would sit and about 40 people in front of me, right from 50 years old to about 21 years old, they used to teach. And I sit and I used to teach basics of physics as to how truck moves, how wheels rotate. And I realized that teaching is very interesting, very gratifying. So I did not know what this would lead to. I knew I had to quit this job. And this was like teaching is something that could help me survive, like make me some money. So I quit Ashok Leyland in about 9 months. I put my resignation, and then I started teaching children and adults for different exams. And then one thing led to the other. I met Abhishek. We started having a conversation, and then we both started Open Door. We realized that the problem in education is that children do not think deeply. They don't question, and then we thought we did not know how to solve it. It's a very idealistic thought. So we again, when we started Open Door, we spent the first year or two in just teaching children by the method of asking questions. And this method is popularly known as Socratic questioning, because about 2,300 years ago, Socrates also used to teach. In similarly, so while we realized that the best form of teaching is by asking questions, we started reading about it, and we were like, wow, Socrates also used to teach like this. So if our and Socrates thoughts match, then you can't be too wrong. Yeah.
So what did you see? आपने क्या महसूस किया ये टीचिंग के बारे में? जब ये आप सबसे you were teaching everyone, what did you think was missing in that system? कि they're going through school, they're going to college, 8 घंटे कर रहे हैं, फिर 2 घंटे ट्यूशन कर रहे हैं, होमवर्क है, असेसमेंट्स है, क्या all these things. Still you felt like that कुछ कमी है. What?
When we look at our school times and we think of what is the biggest thing that we have gained during school times, I think the biggest skill is the ability to think, to reflect, to iterate, to improve, to want to do better. And we realize that this is a skill that is absent in many schools, most schools. On the contrary, children are natural thinkers. Like if you look at a child who's 8 years old, 10 years old, they like to think, they're brimming with questions, and they suddenly stop thinking as they go through the school. So we were thinking that we thought that school not only does not promote thinking, but it also impedes thinking. So many schools come in the way of thinking, because many schools, despite best intentions, they start preaching too much. Your questions are not entertained. Only one answer is correct. So, and then you get only one chance to sort of learn anything. So we thought that we should make a change to the school system. And yeah.
So are you implying or are you saying that you could go inside a classroom, you or even any teacher or school leader, principal, parent, anyone or member of the general public could walk into a classroom, spend 15, 20, 30 minutes, maybe half an hour in that classroom, and you would know कि ये classroom में thinking develop हो रहा है या नहीं हो रहा है. Is that visible?
So one of the signs is that to see is whether who is sort of uh, when you enter a classroom, you can see who is the hero of the classroom. Most of the times, you will see that all the spotlight is on a teacher. In even many teachers are very well intentioned; they want to teach very well, but teachers are teaching all the time. They're trying to explain everything. They take it on themselves to do everything. Uh, but so when you enter a classroom and you see if teacher is teaching everything, you know for sure that this cannot be a thinking classroom, because she is only just explaining everything. In order to see a classroom where thinking is happening, you need to see whether there are questions posed, whether problems are given to solve, whether children and whether the teacher is like one of the shortcuts is to see whether the teacher is a bit quiet or not, and whether questions are being asked or not. And even a lot of thinking can happen in silence. But when we visit classroom, we see a lot of like one way traffic from teacher to students, uh, and that tells us it's not really a thinking classroom. Yeah.
So you mean at a time, when you and I probably went to school, there was always a sage on the stage. There was always, as you said, the hero of the classroom, the teacher who's explaining with energy and enthusiasm and turning around and giving the soliloquy of sorts, right? And children are sitting there. Like, how are children sitting there in a classroom like that? And what do you think is happening in their minds?
Um, so what we have realized is that any kind of learning happens when the children think on their own. If you're just like when you're watching a video, like when you watch a YouTube video or a movie, even you may come out and say that you watched a really interesting video or watched an interesting movie, but you may not have learned too much. So we have realized that the for learning to happen, there has to be some kind of uh, thinking that has to happen. And if the child is only looking at the teacher, it's just like watching a movie or just staring at a page, for example. Like if you're just looking at a page, you can't just learn anything, right? You have to read, apply your mind, figure out whether you understand or not, figure out whether you sort of relate with this or not, and that is when learning happens. So I think mostly in a classroom, children are just as if looking at a page with information on it, but not really learning much from that page.
This reminds me of a joke. One of my friends, he used to take his book and put it under his pillow and sleep over it
Yeah,
before
it's yeah,
before the exam, assuming that things happen.
yeah. It's like you can't learn just by sleeping with a book under you or just having a page in front of you.
सो दिस इज इम्पॉर्टेंट, ये बहुत ज़रूरी है, बिकॉज हमें लगता है कि जब हम हमारे बच्चों को स्कूल भेजते हैं, हम हमारे बच्चे एक क्लास में है, आर चिल्ड्रन आर इन अ क्लास एंड द टीचर इज इंटरैक्टिंग विथ माय चाइल्ड,
हाँ,
टीचर इज आस्किंग क्वेश्चंस टू माय चाइल्ड एट दैट चाइल्ड्स लेवल,
yeah,
एंड टीचर रुक भी रहा है
हाँ,
कि वो जवाब वो सोचे, वो he takes time to think, formulate his answer, create a hypothesis, explain his postulates, things like that,
yeah.
and then the teacher then helps that child, coaches that child, mentor. ये सब होता है क्या स्कूल?
So यहाँ पे दो sort of points हैं. एक point है कि there was a research that was conducted by a lady called Mary Budrow 1970s में, और वो investigate कर रही थी कि जब एक teacher question पूछती है, how much time does she wait before accepting an answer from a child or before herself revealing the answer to the whole class. And that interval is called wait time, that pause after asking a question and before accepting the answer. And she found out in like, what would you say if I were to ask you, how much time do you think she found out as the wait time in her research? Would you guess?
You mean how much time you should wait till you get an answer?
Yeah, correct. She did a research of a
Three,
pool
four
of
seconds? Three seconds?
3 seconds.
Four
So you would say she would ask a question and then tick, 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 then an answer would
मतलब
be
तब
revealed.
तक कोई सवाल कोई जवाब आना चाहिए. There
आना
should be
चाहिए.
some
हाँ.
quibs
So
of
in her
some
research,
attempt at least.
right. So in her research, she found out that teachers wait for 0.9 seconds before an answer is revealed. तो अभी question पूछा ही और answer आ गया. So you would like class में 40, let's say there are 30 or 35 children. The first child disturbs everybody's thinking process, and the teacher is okay with it. And if the first or the children are silent, teacher is okay with revealing the answer. The remaining 34 children were about to think. The answer was about to form in their head, but they no longer are allowed to think because they know the answer now. So we may have a perception that questioning is happening and teacher is waiting, but there is a bit of a hurry in many of the classrooms, and children are deprived of the opportunity to think. And the second point I want to make is that I think interaction or conversation are overrated. While a lot of learning can happen by interacting, like you're questioning me, a lot of learning can happen in silence also. A lot of inventions done by many people were done just on their study table, on their office desk. I'm sure that when you sit on your office desk for an hour, you do a lot of the creativity. By the way, like Isaac Newton, when during the London plague, it's maybe a common example in the 17th century, he discovered the laws of motion, discovered calculus, everything because he was sent home in that London plague, and he was in his on his own in the silence. He did that, sort of figured out so much, did so much learning in silence. So I think first, the point I want to make is that questions should be asked, but so enough time should be given for people to think. And I think individual sort of thinking is also good, and interaction is also good. But you know, we like interactive classroom. Like we feel that children are enjoying, they're having fun, conversation is happening, so this must be learning. When people are in silence, you won't say this is interesting. So the cool factor is not there, I think, when there is silence and there's individual thinking. But like research says that a lot of thinking can happen on your own.
You know, Anish, when I hear you speak about this, I'm called to mind two experiences. One is Jay Maru. Jay Maru was my classmate in 10th standard. और जब भी टीचर सवाल पूछता था 0.67 seconds में वो जवाब देता
हाँ.
And the minute Jay gave the answer, we all stopped thinking. Okay. Uh, the only day we would think was when Jay Maru was absent.
Yeah.
Because then the teacher also would look at everybody else. And when Jay was not paying attention, when a teacher asks a question, the whole class would look at Jay Maru. Jawab de. It was like that. So I can fully understand that the smart will become smarter.
Yeah.
The ones who know will keep growing, and the ones who don't may even quit that whole process of thinking. And teachers may just go for a low hanging fruit.
Yeah.
Got answer? Sabko pata hai? Move forward.
Yeah.
I feel what you're saying is thinking or learning क्लासरूम में ही नहीं होता है, लेकिन एक बच्चे के दिमाग में होता है. Do you think that is true? That learning is deeply personal and it's what happens inside the heads of all the children.
Yeah, so you can't see learning as such. It is not a visible thing. It is not a tangible thing. You can't enter a classroom and say, "Wo ra learning," yeah, "Wo ra thinking." You can see a desk, you can see a teacher, you can see a duster. But there's certain invisible things that you can't see. That's why it's not a cool thing. You can decorate a classroom and feel thinking can happen, and put up good posters and feel learning is happening. But you're right that learning happens invisibly inside your brain. It happens when you are making an effort to construct something, when you're believing that I learned something new, and sort of avoiding what you know before and adding a new layer. And that is not visible very clearly. That's why it's often forgotten. It's like a microorganism. In this room, there are so many. I don't want to alarm everybody that there's so many bacteria in this room, right? We're not aware of them. They're invisible. We don't put notice to them. Similarly, it's a great example, but it sort of puts the point that it is invisible.
And because it is invisible, the teacher who's probably the facilitator, mentor, or guide in that room is taking responsibility of the teaching learning process. So, how can a teacher convert her class into a thinking classroom? First question. My second question is, when children come back home, how can parents get an understanding कि मेरा बच्चा थिंकिंग करता है कि नहीं? मेरा बच्चे को सब आंसर आता है, लेकिन क्या वो सोचता है? क्या वो सही सोचता है? And by सही सोचता, I don't mean from a value moral perspective. I'm thinking from a cognitive perspective. Is he thinking in the right place?
Yeah.
And ये thinking जरूरी क्यों है?
Okay, I'll take the first two questions. I can hold those many in my mind. So the first question is what makes a thinking classroom, and then you asked me about whether how the parent
How
could
parents can see.
figure out. So first, in thinking classroom, mein thinking is for the student. So first, we should clarify that we should see in a classroom. We should make sure that children are thinking in a classroom. For one of the very good tools for thinking is a question. This is a podcast.
Like सवाल.
Like a question asked by a teacher is a good tool to force somebody to think. If I was sitting at my home right now, I would not be thinking so much. I am with you. You asked me about 10, 15 questions already. It is making me think, reflect. So for thinking to happen clearly, and this podcast is an example that questions should be asked, it's a good tool. While thinking can happen while narrating a story, while putting a picture, I think question is the most powerful tool. It forces me to, or a child to answer a question if it's an interesting question, particularly well. Like if somebody is going and I ask them an interesting question, they will stop to be able to answer me. Uh, for example, somebody is going, I say stop, they may not stop. But if I say, can you please stop? Then he will think and probably stop. So I think the very important tool is for teachers to ask questions to children. And then the second point that we covered is that once you ask a good question, let them think. Unless they have to catch a bus, unless teachers have to really rush for an emergency, then it's otherwise. But I think good questions and time to think are paramount. And of course, just like your friend, there are children who would know better than others, who would have prior knowledge, or they'll be more intelligent. But there are many strategies as to how teachers can let these children, the ones who are sort of intelligent, also pause, improve their answers while the others think. So
Strategies बताओ. Tell us some strategies, maybe
I
one or
think just
two.
the basic strategy is, there are many strategies. The basic strategy is to lay a rule that everybody has to be quiet until say 10 is counted or 20 is counted, or the teacher can clarify. Another strategy is that even if children say what the correct answer is, teacher would not say कि तुम सही हो. Teacher बोलेगी शायद सही हो शायद गलत हो. मुझे नहीं मालूम. So this child is confused, and all the 34 other children are also confused whether this is the correct answer or not.
So confusion is not end outcome.
Confusion is an amazing thing. It is a gulf where learning is happening. From one is that you know so much, and then you have to learn something new. But in the world where something is new, in the world where we stay, there is a gulf, and that I think is confusion, discomfort. That is where you're not sure, and that is where you make a choice whether to learn something new or to just fall back in your comfort
This is such
zone.
an amazing point because I have noticed with many interns who join our team, many fresh principals, first time जो principal बनता है, I have noticed that they have absolute clarity.
Hmm.
They know exactly what they have to do, and there is no way you can talk to them. A new teacher who comes, उसको exactly पता है. This is what full clarity. 3 years later, 4 years later, they say, शायद we should try little. 10 years later, they say, I'm full confused. I have no idea what to do.
Yeah.
So it's beautiful for you to suggest that confusion does not mean incompetency. Clarity may not mean being correct.
That's why if you see many people who are good learners, who learn quickly, they will never say कि हाँ I know everything. In fact, they will caveat their sentences by saying I think this is what is there.
मेरे
और
हिसाब से
मेरे हिसाब से मुझे ऐसा लगता है
शायद
शायद ऐसा होगा.
हाँ.
They know they are sure.
Could be.
They know they are sure, but they're keeping that 5-10% doubt in their mind because they know they've been wrong many times before. That's how they've learned. So उनको आदत हो गई है गलत होने की. वो कॉन्फिडेंट भी हैं बट थोड़ा सा डाउट भी रख रहे हैं. तो so this is a very easy sign to see who's a good learner and who's a sort of stagnant person. When you see people using these phrases, I think so, in my opinion, शायद ऐसा होगा, they still convey their point.
And popularly, a lot of people say ये confident नहीं है.
हाँ
इसको पता नहीं है क्या बोल रहा है.
हाँ correct.
You know, he has no sense of he's no confidence. He doesn't have
हाँ
confidence
correct.
on his
Yeah.
conviction नहीं है.
Yeah.
But this is a new way to look at it.
But वही है, people who are confident, वही है कि they feel they are right, and then no further learning can happen because they already know they're right. When you're leaving a little bit of room, then maybe you're open to an opinion, you are accepting that, and then maybe learning can happen. You have that room.
So
You have
that
the door open as open door.
door, the door is open. But then think about this way. एक बच्चा है जो रट रट के पढ़ाई कर रहा है. एग्जाम हमेशा 80-90 ला रहा है. For the past 5 years, he's got 90%, 90%, 90%, 90%, 90%. Is that child sure or confused? It looks to me that he's very sure.
This is the okay. It's an interesting question. I was a child who, at least till my say grade 9 or 10, I used to score well, like 90% or late 80%, and at that point, I thought I knew everything, but I was only memorizing sort of the definitions and sort of scoring well. So these like children like me or many children who score well, there are chances that they may feel they sort of know everything. but their understanding is quite hollow. And then at some point, of course, when they say become older, they when they have to learn something new, it may be difficult for them.
Mm.
That's why you see like many children who score well in school, they stop learning at a certain point. So it's
Mm.
not for everybody. Many children also are genuinely getting 90%. And
Mm.
yeah.
So tell me, like, thinking zaruri क्यों है? Why is thinking so important? Where does it show up in life? Does it show up in life, thinking?
So if you look at the activities that I did since morning today, let's take that up and see where thinking happens. I got up from the bed. I did not need any thinking क्योंकि मुझे पता है कि ऐसे ही उठना है. Then I turned from the bed, put my legs on the other side. It's out of habit. No thinking happened. I went to the washroom, picked up the brush, put the toothpaste, did my blah blah blah. No thinking happened, right? Crossed the road, booked the cab, no thinking happened. In most of the work that I did today, no thinking happened because I'm habituated. But thinking would happen when I'm reconstructing a new thing. Like I was talking to my team and we had to design a poster. It was a new poster, it was a creative task. I couldn't just do it anything. I had to really think, we had to iterate. So that is when thinking happened. When me and you are interacting, we are thinking about it and we are coming with new answers that are unprepared. Thinking is happening. So not too much deep thinking happens in a day, but for all creative work, thinking happens. So, like Daniel Kahneman, like his theory, he's a Nobel Prize winner, is that there are two types of thinking. One is system one thinking, fast thinking, crossing a road, combing the hair, putting up the bag. You need those thinking, but that's very little fast thinking. But that's okay. But if you want to make something new or you want to make something creative, like this podcast or the whole arrangement, then you need the second type of thinking, which is slow thinking. उसमें time लगता है सोचने में, उसमें uncomfortable होता है, उसमें confusion होता है, उसमें. So that is the kind of thinking we want to develop if you want to make children a learning machine. क्योंकि आपने एक बार स्लो थिंकिंग सीख लिया या आपने वो डिस्कम्फर्ट में रहना सीख लिया, तो आप कुछ भी सीख सकते हो. वट एवर यू चूज टू डू. You may want to become a podcast host, may want to become a coder, may want to become a journalist, but आप अच्छे स्टोरीज बनाने लगोगे जर्नलिज्म में, अच्छे पॉडकास्ट बनाने लग जाओगे, अच्छे सेल्स एंड कोडिंग कर पाओगे अगर आपने वो डिस्कम्फर्ट में और स्लो थिंकिंग सीख लिया. तो like there are few instances where thinking is necessary.
I
Yeah.
want to tell you that your story reminds me of my sister-in-law, and fortunately, I have many. So, you know, let them keep thinking. And she says, "Itna mat soch, yaar.
Yeah,
Itna mat soch."
it's a good point.
And that puts me off. I find it difficult to be with people who uh, don't encourage thinking because I think I'm a thinker in a way.
But if I may interrupt here, so किसी को thinking पसंद नहीं है. थिंकिंग बहुत अनकंफर्टेबल चीज़ है. अभी मुझे भी, मैं पॉडकास्ट से आने से, जब मैंने आपको हाँ किया उससे पहले मैं सोच रहा था कि लाइक व्हाई हैव आई पुट माई सेल्फ इन अ सिचुएशन ऑफ डिस्कम्फर्ट. अभी सोचना पड़ेगा फिर से. बट आई थॉट कि मे बी आई लर्न समथिंग आउट ऑफ इट. इफ यू स्क्रॉल थ्रू योर यूट्यूब और योर इंस्टाग्राम एट एनी पॉइंट, जस्ट आप सोचना कि व्हाट आर द यूट्यूब वीडियोज वेर यूर स्टॉपिंग and playing the video. I normally choose videos where I don't have to think. A pure bakwas, entertainment, pure masti mazak. Because किसको सोचना पसंद है. In between the fifth video is a learning video. उसमें कोई समझा रहा है कुछ, वो मैं नहीं देखता हूँ जनरली, क्योंकि वो सोचना पड़ेगा अभी.
Skip ad, skip video.
हाँ, skip वीडियो. अभी ये सोचना, कुछ सिखाएगा, कोई नया कॉन्सेप्ट. I always pick the easy to process videos.
Is that why TikTok
That's why
runs faster than?
yeah. Thinking is a laborious process. Nobody likes to think. इसलिए there's a myth in the classroom. I visited a school recently. उसमें मुझे the principal told me कि why are you asking teachers to ask questions? Children should ask the questions. And that is a new thing apparently, that children should ask questions. And I thought about it. It made a lot of sense कि why is Open Door asking teachers to ask questions while children should ask the question? And I thought about it. I realized that children are not asking too many questions. They're asking some questions, but they're not asking deeper questions, or rather, they can ask more questions. As a school, we need to realize that thinking is quite laborious, and what teachers need to do is to make children happy with that labor first, so that after a few years outside school, they become as I said, a thinking machine or a learning machine. उतना ही काफी है. I think beyond that few years, children don't need to.
I love what you said because you're saying this cognitive load
Yeah,
when you're thinking,
yeah,
your cognitive load, and many people are not comfortable with that thinking. मेरे को नहीं सोचना है इतना,
yeah,
and forget it यार.
yeah,
Tell me a decision
yeah,
and
correct.
take a decision. Move forward. इतना मत सोच life में.
हाँ,
And most people are living life like that. And when you're living life like that, I think you become easy target for clever marketing,
yeah,
for products and services that you probably don't need, and you probably end up being highly manipulated. I think for marketers and businesses across the world, they would probably want people not to think.
yeah,
For some governments, they would probably want people not to think,
yeah,
right? So thinking looks like it's difficult, and hence most people don't do.
yeah.
Thinking looks like it's not necessary.
It's like the analogy that I have used before, that if you come like if you go to a restaurant, you have the option of going to a McDonald's where there are crispy burgers and nice, you know, it's laden with carbs and everything. On the other hand, you have a salad shop where there are greens and veggies and everything. You will typically choose the McDonald's. Even I do. So I compare McDonald's with how typically learning happens. Easy hai, bata diya, yaad karke aa jao. But it is the greens and veggies which thinking is. So what is important for teachers is to feed more greens and veggies, जो कि टेस्टी नहीं है लेकिन ज़रूरी है। अ,
और आगे पता चलेगा
हाँ,
अगर
तो
आपने
और
खाया है नहीं.
हाँ, आगे पता पड़ेगा। और अगर आपको ग्रीन्स एंड वेजीज़ खाने की आदत हो गई तो यू विल नॉट डिस्करेज ग्रीन्स एंड वेजीज़। लॉट ऑफ चिल्ड्रन ग्रो अप एज़ एडल्ट्स एंड से कि मुझे ये स्पिनच नहीं पसंद है, मैं खाऊँगा ही नहीं, क्योंकि बचपन में खाया ही नहीं है। द सिम थिंकिंग इज़ वेरी सिमिलर।
विच मीन्स अगर आप स्टार्टिंग से थिंकिंग का प्रैक्टिस नहीं है,
या
तो आगे जाके यू मे नॉट बी एबल टू पिक इट अप
या
दैट इजी.
इट्स लाइक अ हैबिट, लाइक एनी हैबिट्स।
थिंकिंग इज अ हैबिट.
थिंकिंग इज़ अ हैबिट, it becomes a habit. Once you do it so many times, it just becomes a habit. Just like any other thing, just like getting out of a bed or driving a car. You don't have to think while turning left or right. So thinking just becomes a automatic sort of a
माई चाइल्ड कम्स होम फ्रॉम स्कूल और मैं उनको पूछता हूँ, बेटा आज आपने क्या सीखा स्कूल में?
yeah,
क्वेश्चन नंबर वन.
yeah.
नेक्स्ट डे माई चाइल्ड कम्स बैक फ्रॉम स्कूल एंड आई आस्क, बेटा आज स्कूल में ऐसा क्या सीखा जो आपको गलत लगा? इज देयर अ डिफरेंस बिटवीन दीज टू क्वेश्चन?
Yeah, there is a difference, of course. Um, this sort of reminds me of a book that I was reading, I think Zero to One, where one of the interviewing tips that I think Peter Thiel had was कि वो he used to ask the candidates कि what is the one thing that you believe in that is contradictory to the general notion, and then based on what that is, he used to sort of hire people. So it's similarly, it is essential for a child to know that he doesn't agree with something or he doesn't understand fully. I think another question to ask was कि आपको to ask कि आपको समझ आया है कि नहीं। और अगर बच्चे ने बोला कि सब समझ आ गया मुझे, तो गड़बड़ है। क्योंकि ऐसा तो हो ही नहीं सकता कि आपको कुछ समझ आ गया फुल्ली, एज फार एज द कॉन्सेप्ट इज कंसर्न। बट इफ अ चाइल्ड सेज कि हाँ मुझे आया है, आ गया समझ, बट एक दो चीज़ नहीं समझ आई, बट ये समझ नहीं आया, दैट इज वॉट आई वुड लुक एट एज अ पेरेंट टू सी वेदर द चाइल्ड इज लर्निंग और नॉट। सो इट्स वेरी काउंटर इंट्यूटिव कि बच्चे ने अगर बोला कि समझ गया तो पक्का गड़बड़ है, और बच्चे ने बोला कि समझ में है बट कुछ चीज़ें नहीं समझी, तो फिर शायद सीख रहा है वो। इट्स अ गुड साइन। एंड सिमिलरली सो व्हेन यू रीड अ पेज, लेट्स से कि आप एक बुक से कुछ नया सीखने की कोशिश करिए, यू रीड अ पैराग्राफ एंड यू स्टॉप एट अ सेकेंड एंड यू रियलाइज, यू आस्क योरसेल्फ कि यार ये समझ नहीं आया, एक बार फिर से पढ़ता हूँ। Some people would do that, and lot of people will read books after books, feeling कि आ गया समझ. Their cupboards are filled with books. They read books, but learning like the first person is probably learning more because he's unsure, he's pausing, and that is what thing is metacognition. That you're questioning your own learning. You're sort of reflecting on your own.
दिस इज थोड़ा सा सॉरी स्टेट है. द रीजन आई एम आस्किंग इज, यू there's no teacher who comes to an interview and he say and the teacher says I'm not sure, देखेंगे, सोचता हूँ. No teacher gets a job by displaying this behavior. Uh, no teacher gets a promotion. If the principal came to that class and all children are quiet, they're thinking, they're looking for teacher action. They're looking for teacher's heroism, you know. To a certain extent, they're looking for entertainment from a teacher.
Yeah.
And I think that parents need to understand.
Yeah.
Principals need to understand.
Yeah.
I think the metrics of evaluation needs to change.
Yeah.
And this brings me to think, फिर assessment school में कैसे करेंगे फिर? Because if the assessment is all optics,
Yeah.
अरे मैं वो क्लास में गया and the teacher was non-stop 45 minutes, how beautifully she spoke. And children were in rapt attention, hypnotized.
Yeah.
How do we look at assessment? Assessment क्या है? Assessment कैसे करना चाहिए? और किसका assessment होता है?
Yeah. So firstly, assessments I feel are the most misunderstood aspect of education, and at the same time it is the most important aspect of education because सब कोई assessments के लिए ही पढ़ रहे हैं. स्कूल में कुछ टेस्ट्स होते हैं, हाफ ईयरलीज, पीरियडिकल्स, फाइनल ईयर, और टीचर्स भी उस टेस्ट के लिए पढ़ा रही है और बच्चे भी टेस्ट के लिए पढ़ रहे हैं. तो आई थिंक इफ यू वी इम्प्रूव द असेसमेंट और डू समथिंग अबाउट द असेसमेंट, द होल लर्निंग कैन चेंज. कि बच्चे विल स्टार्ट लर्निंग फॉर अ बेटर असेसमेंट. So what I feel there are two issues that need to worked on with assessments. First is that the kind of questions that we are asking in assessments need to be improved. If we ask a question ki define reproduction or state three kinds of forces or state the laws of reflection, and these are typically sort of they comprise 80% of the assessment, तो बच्चे फिर याद करके ही आ जाएंगे. तो फर्स्ट ये क्वेश्चन पूछो ही नहीं. बच्चों से ये पूछो कि अगर लाइट अगर स्ट्रेट लाइन में नहीं चलेगी तो क्या होगा. अगर हमारी कार में एक इंजन है तो हमारे बॉडी में कितने इंजन हैं. अगर हम अगर पानी अगर ट्रांसपेरेंट नहीं होता तो क्या होता, क्या बॉल नीचे ही गिरती है, ऊपर भी आ सकती है. सो फर्स्ट द क्वेश्चंस हैव टू बी all replaced a majority of the assessment and made to be good questions. As soon as that happens, children start learning for a better test and teachers start teaching for a better test. Teachers will not be forced to teach in a better manner. Second, when we take an assessment, we often label the children that you've scored a 90%, you've scored a 80%, you've scored a 40%. This is where you are. Now I'm going to teach something else. Now I've taught fractions, I have to teach decimals now. ये बाद में देखेंगे या whatever. I think this is a problem because children are capable of learning given the time. कोई जल्दी नहीं है ऐसे सीखने की. You can spend more time and give them more opportunities to learn. So one of the things that should happen is that the children who haven't done well in assessment, they should get 2 more days, 4 more days, few more days to understand the topic better. So they should be given one more assessment or one more opportunity or 2 more opportunities to do better. Nobody bothers whether you learned fractions in 7 days or 10 days. Nobody bothers whether you learned driving in a month or 2 months. Nobody bothered whether you learned to walk in a year or 2 years. Eventually, everybody does a good job at walking, driving a car, and at fractions. So, to summarize, two things need to happen. Questions need to improve, and when children made a mistake, when they're insufficient, उनको बोलो कि हम और टाइम देंगे आप. अब अच्छे हो जाओ, फिर आप we'll continue. It is ideal, it's very idealistic that I'm talking, but then open door, we have been successful at having a practical solution of this at schools, and then this is sort of improving a lot of children in these schools.
I like the fact that you say that अगर आप assessment change करोगे तो बाकी सब change होगा. It's almost like saying, there's this joke about engineering students. Joke is एक engineering student के सामने तुम 800 पेज का बुक जो भी थमा देते हो उनको. The only question that engineering student asks is exam कब है.
Yeah.
And to me that means that we are optimizing for a goal.
Yeah.
Everyone's optimizing for a goal,
Yeah.
correct? And if the goal is going to be an exam which depends on rote memorization, people will optimize for it.
Yeah.
I love the way you say that because you are saying that teachers know to teach thinking. Parents also know thinking का जरूरी है. Students also know कि यार स्कूल में ठीक है हम जाते हैं and हम आते हैं. Everybody seems to know, like open door, it's open secret. कि ये सबसे कुछ होने वाला नहीं है, दिस इज नॉट इनफ,
Yeah.
राइट? Yet you say that when we change the assessment, automatically everyone is going to change.
Yeah.
It means what gets measured gets done.
Correct.
And in system thinking, they also say that if a goal, rather, if a target, sorry, if a measurement becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measurement. Like if a measurement is बच्चे को अगर 80% मिला, इसका मतलब ये है कि वो पढ़ रहा है, वो सोच रहा है, वो ग्रो कर रहा है, all these things are getting done. But if the child and parent feels कि हमारा टारगेट ये है कि एग्जाम में 80% आए, that's when you might get situations where children get 80% by hook or by crook, but not do well in life.
Yeah. So, so one thing is that exams, when exams are already happening in the school, we might as well make these exams better because they're anyway a target. Um, and that's what CBSE has done recently, albeit slowly, that they are now improving the questions in the CBSE exam. If you look at the CBSE exam and the IIT JEE exam, there are these two exams. A lot of children prepare for an CBSE exam, and a lot of people then prepare for an IIT exam. The the IIT being a better exam, IIT JEE being a better exam, having better questions, it forces people to think deeply because this exam will not give you 1 mark or 2 mark also if you do not understand the topic very well. So it forces so many children to learn better. In fact, it is the exam IIT JEE which has produced so many IITians. It is not the IIT itself, I think. But it is the exam that has created a generation of successful people, like from Sundar Pichai to everybody else. So I think the firstly the exam should be improved. If you are taking an exam, you might as well improve it.
Hmm. I love the fact that you say that वैसे ही मेहनत कर रहे हैं. We are so much effort is going into it. Children are going to schools, lakhs and lakhs of kilometers of
Yeah,
buses are being driven every day. Everyone's putting in so much effort. Since you're putting in so much effort, might as well get it right and do it correctly.
yeah,
But you mentioned about the CBSE now trying to change their exam pattern. Isn't it kind of a chicken and egg situation? Because अगर आप exam pattern change करोगे, the first 2-3 years, these kids, the 8th, 9th, 10th standard kids will find it difficult because they were taught differently. Uh, so, what do you think? You think the way to change the way classrooms are taught is by changing the exam, and then collateral damage maybe 2, 3, 4 years of children, or should we change the curriculum, the textbook, and everything first, uh, and then change the exam? It also it or we should be doing both. It's a complex question. It requires some thinking and some cognitive load.
yeah. So I think it happens together. Both of them happen together. The exam needs to be made better. It doesn't have to be done drastically, like CBSE is doing correctly now, that they're improving the exam a little bit, increasing the weightage of good questions, and then in parallel, the curriculum is catching up, and then in parallel, the school's teaching is catching up. So it can all happen sort of together without any of the three taking a drastic step.
Oh, that's a beautiful, beautiful way. And should we wait for the boards and everyone to tell us what to do, or can school leaders and principals today, people who own schools, chains of schools, people who have influence and authority and who have control in schools, what can they do right now today with their own resources to create thinking classrooms that generate children who are going to be the future of India? Because I did a podcast today in the morning, and that person said India has such a huge democratic dividend. India has such a huge number of people, and if these people start thinking and creating and solving problems, India can change the world.
Yeah. Yeah, so I agree with it. That India has a like large population, and especially if you look at the CBSE makes a curriculum which has schools in the urban areas, small towns, and then some in the rural areas. So it needs to make the CBSE needs to make a uniform policy for all kinds of schools. But the schools who already have good teachers, like the schools in the urban areas or schools with sort of decent fees, they don't need to wait for doing the right thing. And I meet a lot of school leaders, a lot of young people like you who sort of running a school, and they are not waiting anymore for CBSE. They are two steps of ahead of CBSE or ICSE, and they know that CBSE will always be a bit slow because it's a uniform board for a large population. Yeah.
So, what can, first of all, since you, thank you for calling me young, but since you meet so many principals and so many school owners, um, do you feel they understand what thinking is? And do you feel there is a change in their thinking after they've met you?
Yeah, so thinking, because it's very difficult to convey thinking with adjectives. When we meet school owners, we typically ask them a lot of questions that are there in the open doors products, whether thinking classroom or thinking assessment. So we just pose a question to them. For example, if in which month is the khadak khadak sound of trains the loudest, or um,
Really?
yeah,
There is
or
a month?
yeah, or like what would happen if we could also do photosynthesis, like the plants around you? So we can't keep harping on thinking if we don't. We just ask these questions to the school leaders and then allow them to go through the same experience that children go through.
Are
And
you also going to answer those two questions? Because now I'm thinking about that.
yeah, so for yeah, I mean leave it for the audience to sort of think about it, but I'll give a hint to the audience. The first question is, in which month is the khadak khadak sound of trains the loudest? So this has something to do with the railway tracks. There are gaps between the tracks, and then something about that. So I want to give wait time to the audience. And the second question is whether what would happen when we would start making food, we would start doing photosynthesis like plants do. If you see, plants are always sitting in a pot or in the soil, nicely making their food. Aram se lunch, dinner, idli, dosa, vada pav, sab they make. It is the humans who have to depend on somebody for food, buy food, order food, cook food. Unfortunately, neither me and you, nor say Vladimir Putin or Joe Biden or anybody, the most evolved and powerful people in the world still can't make their own food. So it would be like quite interesting, and it sort of opens up a lot of thinking when such questions are asked. So we pick up these questions from Open Doors work. We've spent a lot of time in designing these products, designing these questions. And then we, during our presentations to school teachers and owners and principals, we give them a glimpse of the experience of thinking by just asking these questions to them, putting them in a bit of a spot, and then taking them through the happiness of discovering this. And then we convey to them that this is what your teachers can also do in the classroom. And that is what thinking classroom really is. Yeah.
So, is there an age? Is there an age to thinking? Thinking हम 15 साल के बाद सिखाएंगे. Is there something like that, or is it like fathers telling children 12वीं के बाद आप क्या करोगे? चाइल्ड सेइंग नहीं आई एम नॉट सो श्योर क्या करूंगा. ठीक है इंजीनियरिंग कर ले तब बाद में सोचेंगे. Is there an age to thinking? When can we start teaching children thinking?
I think after a certain age, there's a lot of research on this, but I think after the age of 8 or 9, comfortably, a lot of thinking can happen. And the thing is that the kind of subjects that we teach after the age of 8 and 9, if you look at math, look at science, history, English, they are all opportunities for us to make children think. So the problem is that we teach math in a certain manner, we teach science in a conventional manner, we teach English in a certain manner, and then we ask ourselves कि अब thinking कब करना है. The point is कि आप जब math पढ़ा रहे थे, science पढ़ा रहे थे, English पढ़ा रहे थे, those were the opportunities to think. Why would you tell the answer to a math problem? Let children think of the answer. That is thinking. Ask questions and during the process of teaching science, वो thinking है. आप इंग्लिश में अगर कुछ पढ़ा रहे हो तो give them a passage and ask them for their opinion. That is thinking. You're teaching history, tell them about the past, and then ask them whether the ruler or certain person did the right thing or not. So you don't have to teach thinking separately from teaching these subjects. I think each of the subjects lends a lot of opportunity to make children think. And essentially, whether the child learns math and science is not important. Just say, it's been a long time since I used science, by the way. Like I know science to a decent level, but बहुत टाइम हो गया अलजेब्रा यूज़ किए। मैं आई थिंक अलजेब्रा शायद काफ़ी साल हो गए मैंने यूज़ ही नहीं किया है। सो द पॉइंट इज़ कि अलजेब्रा क्यों पढ़ा फिर मैंने? तो अलजेब्रा पढ़ने का पॉइंट इज़ नॉट टू लर्न अलजेब्रा, इट इज़ टू लर्न थिंकिंग। The point to learning, say, calculus or trigonometry or any other topic is not to learn trigonometry, but to learn thinking. Trigonometry काम नहीं आएगा. A lot of t-shirts and memes and comics saying कि when did we last use algebra? What is the point? And teachers spend a lot of time conveying to children कि algebra हाँ यहाँ use होता है. They put up examples from daily life जहाँ use होता है. But those are forced examples. Really, the point of learning all these subjects is to develop the opportunity to think. That's about it. You may not use many of these subjects.
And is thinking equal to learning? Like, if I develop thinking, I've automatically developed learning, or is good learning like thinking is a result of good learning? Is learning a result of thinking, or is thinking a result of good learning?
Okay, so let's take the first question. Is learning a result of thinking? Let's say you know something today. Let's say, let's say I have a certain understanding of how this mic operates today. I have a very basic understanding. Uh, Now, if I want to change from this level of understanding to a higher level, I'll have to put the effort to know the new thing, and then to forego the previous thing, and then to accept whether the new thing. So I have to do something, some amount of cognitive work. So to for me to learn something about the mic, I have to put my mind. I won't do it automatically. Like this mic is here. I didn't think of anything about the mic. But when you ask me something about the mic, I will be forced to think. So like I travel in a car, I look around myself. I'm not necessarily think how many buildings I crossed today while coming to this place. I didn't learn anything about architecture. I didn't learn anything about buildings. I didn't learn anything about roads today. I crossed so many trees. I was not putting the effort to think. But had I put the effort to think on my own, or had somebody asked me some question, I may have sort of learned something new. So we keep living our life learning very little because we don't. And I am a culprit that I don't also learn much. So I have what I've understood is that learning is definitely a result of some thinking. May happen on your own, may happen through a forced push. And secondly, is thinking a result of learning? As you keep learning, you're learning because you're thinking, and once this becomes a habit, you realize that the only way you can learn is to think. So learning does more puts you more in the habit of thinking. So yes, learning pushes thinking, and then thinking is necessary for. I think this is my sort of understanding so far.
It just means that every classroom should be a thinking classroom.
It should be a thinking classroom.
Because thinking से learning होगा, because thinking से construction होगा,
हाँ,
thinking से knowledge बनेगी,
yeah,
thinking से realization होगा,
yeah,
thinking से behavior change होगा,
yeah,
and learning is defined as change in behavior.
yeah. That's
So
yeah. If there's no thinking classroom, there's no learning classroom.
there's no learning. There is classroom,
Yeah,
there is teacher,
yeah,
there's furniture,
yes,
there is
yeah.
door,
Correct. And there's possibly interaction, possibly a lot of joy,
joy,
possibly children
happiness.
saying, "Wow, best
Yeah.
class ever,"
Yeah.
or and so many superlatives, nodding their head, smiling, having fun. All that is great. It's a good experience. But if there is no thinking in that process while smiling and nodding their heads, then most likely, in my knowledge, there's no learning as well.
So thinking is good business. Thinking is good business. Let me
Yeah,
let
sure.
me expand that a little bit. If you're a school owner, if you're a school principal, if you want to take your school to the next level, you better be having thinking classrooms.
Yeah.
If you have thinking classrooms, what do you think is going to be the positive impact on the school, on the students? We now established that this definitely has a great impact on the child and the child's ability to thrive
Yeah.
in an evolving world. But how does it help the school? How does it help the school solve its everyday existential problems like teachers, training, parents being happy, unhappy, students achieving, not achieving? Does it make good business sense in a way of speaking? How many schools have you worked with, by the way?
We currently work with about 300 schools.
300.
Yeah.
And children?
Or 1,80,000 or so.
Wow, there's 180,000 students. So you have seen perhaps changes that schools have gone through.
Yeah.
What are those changes? And I also have an anecdotal experience. I run a school um, about 2 hours away from Mumbai, which is which is a thinking school. Uh, we have very few children there, extremely few. And there was a time when we were thinking of shutting that school down and converting that school to another popular board. And a parent called me and said, "Sir, आपसे मिलना है, आपसे मिलना है." आपसे. I'm like, okay, मिलो. He said, नहीं नहीं, आपसे मिलना है, seriously मिलना है. And he showed up with three other parents.
Mm.
And he said only one thing, school बंद नहीं करना. I said, क्यों? He's like, मेरे मेरे बच्चों में जो थिंकिंग हो रहा है, अब ये बच्चे और कहीं नहीं पढ़ सकते. सर बंद नहीं करना, मैं बंद करने नहीं दूंगा सर.
Mhm.
And for that second, I just felt that it took maybe 5 years for this parent to understand that. So, is there a time for thinking to show? Is there a time for the benefits to show in the school? Because schools, no, in my opinion, live by the year only. Every year they do a hard reset. They'll add a new product. They'll keep it for 1 year. They'll say कुछ चल रहा है क्या? नहीं, बंद कर दो, नया डालो.
Yeah.
They're doing hard resets.
Yeah.
Is 1 year good enough? Is that a good time? It's an
Uh,
open question.
yeah. So
Approach it from any way you want to approach it, and you might be helping some school owners and principals
yeah.
take a decision on this one.
Yeah, I think but just like a habit, thinking takes a while to be developed. It may take a year or a couple of years or 3 years. The research is sort of out there. But when you look at a school owner or a principal, the reason why they have sort of they're running the school, one of the reason is of course business. There needs to be sort of business coming in. It sort of keeps you running. But then once that is said and done, that your business is settled, the second reason is are the children, of course. And like you said, that the parents they came back to you sort of to thank you with the culture that you're developing. I think there's a great deal of happiness when you have developed children into a lifelong thinker, and when the child comes back after many years saying that whatever I am today is because the kind of thinking that I sort of learned in your school. So this may be a slightly long-term investment, but it is quite gratifying for a school. It may not lead to immediate results, but it sort of leads to children becoming really good learners and very successful learners in the future.
Hmm. D- How much? How much of knowledge, expertise, subject matter expertise is required for a teacher to become a proponent or a creator of a thinking classroom? Does she need a PhD in physics to become a teacher who helps children develop thinking? Or can she be, a BSc with a B.Ed and with the right guidance or with some coaching, with some strategies, can she then dramatically make a pivotal shift? The delta between what was happening earlier and now, does she move the needle?
So I think the most one of the most important things that a teacher must have, it's very counterintuitive, very simple, is that she must or he must have a good subject knowledge. Um, if you want to learn singing from somewhere, would you learn singing from somebody who's an okay singer? You probably would not, I think. If I want to learn tennis from somebody, I would not go to a coach who herself or himself is okay, ठीक है, at tennis. You would always want to um, learn anything from somebody who's really good at that thing. I want to learn cooking from not my cook who's okay at cooking, but from somebody who's really good at cooking. And the reason is that when you're really good at that subject, you already know the kind of mistakes that your students would have. You know the misconceptions. You have gone through the journey of going deeper into the subject. You can teach better. You can design better questions, and you know when the child is sort of answering your question whether they're right or wrong. So I think it's extremely important, and I think schools should spend a lot of energy. I know a lot of training happens on pedagogy, on on classroom management and such topics. But I think there's more emphasis that should be given on subject knowledge. The children should learn science from somebody, ideally a scientist, isn't it? If we can't have a scientist, we should have a person who really loves science. So we should develop the sort of the feeling of joy in science and math and other subjects and teachers. That's one, of course. That's not enough though. But that's number one. The second is, of course, they should know how to teach. And I think we covered that in the podcast today, that teaching is not about explaining, but about making sure that children are thinking, children are learning. So once you know the subject, ideally, when you know a subject well, most people would jump into explaining a lot. It's very hard to know something and not teach, not reveal the answer, not explain everything. So once you know everything, you should stop. And then when you're teaching, act stupid, act dumb, pretend that you don't know, make a mistake deliberately, and see whether children can correct you or not. Tell them, I don't know. Why don't you figure out on your own? So I think two things are important: knowing everything, and then act as if you don't know anything. But for you to pretend that you don't know anything, you should be able to know the difference between a correct and wrong answer. Let's say you ask a question and children say something, you should know whether it is right or wrong. So when it is right, you pretend you don't know. When it is wrong, you give them a hint. So you are in control when you sort of know the subject well. I think though this is what I figured. These are the two important things.
That leads me to think: is there a language for thinking? And what I mean by that, what I mean by that is, I mean, language is a building blocks of communication, and communication creates. When you're talking to people, you're seeing all these images in your head, and that's because you're thinking about the word associations and the word meaning associations. You're building a schema in your mind, right? This the schema model of thinking. So, is there a language to thinking? Is something that I'm thinking about right now. And second thing is thinking is it only algebra and geometry and science that promotes thinking? What about is there thinking in English or
Yeah.
Hindi or Marathi or is it just designed to show the aesthetic value of language and literacy?
So from what I understand, many subjects have the opportunity to be able to make children think, right? From psychology, economics, languages. Um, from my little understanding, I think there are two aspects to any subject. One is knowledge, the things that you know. Like in English, you will not question the grammar. Like you would know that articles are a and an and the. You know that this is present tense and so on. You don't question that because you need that hygiene to sort of learn a language. You know that, like in psychology, this is called, say, cognitive dissonance. But once you understand that knowledge, then you can play a lot with thinking. Once children know the articles, when they know how to read, then you can ask them to construct something new, or or tell them they tell their opinion on a certain thing. So I think once the knowledge is sorted out, that's why initial years are spent a lot on language and on basics, so that then it should open up opportunities to think. From my little understanding of other subjects, I think there's plenty of opportunity.
I love the fact that you say that thinking needs to be taught across the school, through the school, all over the school, all through school. I love that fact because while children learn English and math and science and history and geography and algebra and geometry and calculus and all these things, when they may be studying in a in compartments. They may be having a compartmentalized experience of education, a structured education. But when they approach life, I think everything in life is integrated. I think there are no math problems in life. I think there are only word problems in maths, which might have math deeply hidden
Yeah.
inside that. I mean, you go to a shop to buy a mobile phone, and there are seven different mobile phones with seven different payment plans, and now you have 49 permutation and combination that you want to look at. You swipe your card, and the person says, "Do you want me to convert that into EMI, or do you want me to do it this way or that way?" And every time you start realizing that there is math inside the language, and if we can't find the math, we can't solve the problem. If we don't get the if we don't understand the English, we don't get the math. If we don't get the math, we don't know what operators to put in. I think so much of life, um, depends upon decisions that we take, and so much of decisions depend upon given. What is given to us? What is a variable? What is it that I need to find out? And I love the way that you put it, that we don't learn algebra to learn algebra. We learn algebra to develop a, an algebraic form of thinking, to work with variables, to work with the unknowns, to work with what we have, to discover what we don't know. And I think this is so beautiful, because there are these so many times people come and say, I don't know why I learned trigonometry.
Yeah,
I've
it's a
never
very
used it in
common.
life.
Yeah,
And the only thing that most teachers say, the reason we learn trigonometry is to build bridges.
yeah. Very few examples. But the thing is, you're using trigonometry when you're thinking, you're solving a day-to-day problem. Not just trigonometry, but so many subjects. So it's not just like, I know math teachers and science teachers, especially math teachers, they look for, like, they really force application of math in different places. Like when pizza comes, the fraction comes.
Has to
So
be fractions.
yeah. But then the thing is that you don't have to immediately use it, or you don't have to use it in the same form. Every math. So I thought about it, and I once thought, why is in math a question called a problem? It's not called a question. When I was in school,
Yeah, math problems.
yeah, when I was in school in class 11th, one of my good friends told me कि I was writing question 1, question 2, question 3 मैथ में. He said नहीं,
ये
मैथ
प्रॉब्लम है.
में क्वेश्चन नहीं बोलते, प्रॉब्लम बोलते हैं.
Math needs a
तो
psychologist.
मैंने सोचा इसको प्रॉब्लम क्यों बोलते हैं, क्वेश्चन क्यों नहीं बोलते. लेटर आई रियलाइज कि बिकॉज every problem in math can be solved, by the way, other than 10 or 11 problems that have never been solved. So every time you solve a problem, it gives you the confidence कि ये problem solve हो सकता है. इनफैक्ट मैथ में हर प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व हो सकता है. तो जब मैथ में हो सकता है, एंड जब आप हजारों प्रॉब्लम्स, व्हेन यू सॉल्व थाउजेंड्स ऑफ प्रॉब्लम्स, you know that a new problem comes in your life, you have to take a decision, this can also be solved. So I mean, this is my own notion that like in math, a question is called a problem, and it sort of leads you to believe that problems can be
I love
solved.
that idea. Yeah, I think it's a life changing, groundbreaking, phenomenal idea, in the sense that the more problems children solve, the idea that children develop, that there is a problem and problems can be solved.
Yeah.
That means there is a solution. It's just that I haven't found the solution.
Yeah, and it's important
It
for
gives hope. It's a message of
yeah,
hope.
it gives hope, and for this hope to be built, I think teachers should give new problems for to children. Many a times, many a time teachers they tend to repeat the kind of problems that are in the book, and then the same questions they come up in the exam. या फिर पिछले साल वो क्वेश्चन पूछा है और इस साल फिर से आ जाता है, तो the children have seen the problem somewhere, so it's no longer a new problem. I think it's important for teachers to pose new problems to children, and once children figure out, यार ये फिर से नया क्वेश्चन प्रॉब्लम आ गया और फिर से मैंने सॉल्व कर लिया आफ्टर 15 minutes of sort of sitting on it, I know कि जब मैं इसको I do it 1,000 times in school, I can do it another time uh, in my day to day life, and that's all. I think it's very simple.
Almost on a closing note, I want to understand, do you feel there is an impact for the mother tongue? And do you feel that mother tongue instruction might help thinking better, so that the children don't have the complexity of learning a new language or figuring out a new language and the problem at the same time? Because there is the syntax of the language, the spirit of what is being spoken. Is there any personal thoughts around that? Because every time I looked at a word problem in math, and I would talk to my mom would be like, let me explain to you
Yeah,
in Malayalam, and suddenly I would get it.
yeah.
So any personal responses?
Yeah, so we spend a lot of thought on this at Open Door. We design a lot of questions, and a question is really a string of words. It's a combination of 10, 12, 15 words with an image with it. All of these are a sort of necessary for children to fully go into the experience of thinking. They have to go through understanding these words and then the picture, if there is, right? So at Open Door, we try to make sure that the words are easy to understand. There is no ambiguity in it. There is no unnecessary distraction in it. If there is a picture, we should provide a picture. And there are, and the question is not voluminous, right? So if we are asking a science and math question that we do at Open Door, we keep words minimum, because words may be impediment. And then coming to the language, I think if children understand Hindi better, then understand Tamil, Marathi, or Bengali better, whatever, if your focus is to make children think, then you can change your language to whatever form they understand better.
I love what you're saying. You're saying English is not knowledge.
Yeah, if you want to learn English, then you must put a lot of English. But if at that point you want to think, make them think in a certain way in a certain subject, you may sort of forego, let it go, and ask in a simpler, easy manner.
Brilliant. Any final closing thoughts? Any ideas that are coming to your mind that you feel that you absolutely want to say uh, in this time that we have together today? Anything that comes to mind that you think is left unsaid?
Uh,
A message to a principal, a message to a school leader, or a parent, or even a student or teacher.
so I think the school leaders, I have a lot of respect for the school leaders. I meet on an average two school leaders a day. I've met, I don't know, hundreds of school leaders, and I meet a lot of well-meaning school leaders within the constraints of where the schools operate. On one hand, there are parents who want certain things. Syllabus is limited. So many sort of CBSE, ICSE, government doing certain things. But there are a lot of well-meaning school leaders out there who want to bring a change in the school, who want to do the right thing. Incidentally, many of them are young. Some of them are little elder, but still young at heart. So at Open Door, we it gives a lot of encouragement to us when we meet these people, because they want to bring a change in their school, who understand what we're doing at Open Door, who love Open Door's questions and products, and then who also give a chance to Open Door to be in their classroom. When the school does give us an opportunity to be a part of their classroom, whether thinking classroom or thinking assessments, typically they don't look back. They continue Open Door for many years. They see a big change happening in teachers and students. And to your question that you had asked me earlier, there are like the two important stakeholders in school, teachers and students. And Open Door has seen a lot of change happening in teachers and students through both our products. Teachers have begun to think very differently in science and math. They were teaching science and math for many years, but many of us tell us that for the first time we are truly understanding science in this manner, or math in this manner. And for children, their confidence has really gone up in science and math. They've begun to appreciate science and math more. So yeah, if like given a chance, we would like to be a part of more classrooms. And yeah, and then as far as the podcast, I had a lot of fun. I didn't for in between the podcast, I forgot there's a mic because we were just chatting like we have chatted before. Yeah, thank you for inviting me, and yeah, have a good
More
week
power
ahead.
to you, Anish Bangia. And that's it, ladies and gentlemen. Today, I think we all have an opportunity to make change happen in our classrooms, an opportunity for ensuring that our children don't waste any time, but they develop the strong mental competence, capacities, and the skills required to create an ever evolving, changing India. And India that's going to build a generation of thought leaders, a generation of problem solvers. India that is going to change the way the world is for the better. Thank you so much, Anish. More power to Open Door. I really hope that principals and school owners across India reach out to you and start creating thinking classrooms.
Thank you, Willie. Thank you so much.